Well, hello everyone, and welcome to my Vinland Saga read-through for the first time ever. And with me is...
Jarkey Bacon. Yes, it's me. I'm here to destroy any misinformation and to make sure that this man loves this series, so he can inevitably come back and watch all my videos. That's the plan. I don't know. I don't
Yes,
know
yes.
about you, but that's my only reason I'm here. Yeah.
Well, what type of videos do you make?
That's a good idea. I make videos about Vinland Saga, mostly. I've kind of pigeonholed myself, but that's because I don't know, lots of the smaller videos I can think of that go in between big long videos are Vinland Saga related. And in like the last year or 6 months, I've kind of blown up in this specific online community. People know me. It's weird. People be like, "Oh, I've seen your video on whichever character." I'm just like, "Oh, I've been recognized. I'm famous." And then it goes on from there. So yeah, that's what I do. Scripted content, by the way. So and I like to put F in my editing. So like Mr. Ari here, it should be a pleasure, a feast for the eyes as well as the ears.
So, I guess, I don't know, well, I should probably introduce like what this is going to cover, which is the first 16 chapters of Vinland Saga, which I have seen the anime. So... I think essentially all of this is stuff I have seen before that I've just never read before. And you've seen the anime too, right? I'm assuming.
Yes, I have. I have twice. Once in Japanese and once in the dub. So.
Wow. All right. What did you did you read first or did you watch the anime?
Okay. Just for viewers out there to make it perfectly clear, we are going book by book of the English volumes. So that's 2 Japanese volumes at a time. So if you'd like to follow along, we've just read book 1 of the English translation, or if you use another translation, it'll be the first 2 volumes. Also to chapter 16, and that's how we'll be doing it. So if you want to read ahead and then catch up for the next one of these, which we don't know when it'll be out, you can do that. Now to answer Ari's specific question, Vinland Saga had a very unique start for its anime. It was on Amazon Prime, which is the only thing I owned legally at the time. So I tried to watch as much on Amazon as possible. But it had this unique start where it released 3 episodes on one day and then didn't release any episodes on the subsequent on the continuing 2 weeks. I can't say that word right now, so I'll just miss it. And so that means that I could watch basically an hour of an anime, an hour long anime pilot. And so I did, and the music was enthralling. It kind of creates and just the atmosphere and environment, and Thors as a character archetype is one that kind of like a big beefy guy with a big heart that kind of works on me almost to a fault, without exception. And so I was just really amped up, and because I was like, wait, I have to wait 2 weeks for the next episode, I'm gonna buy a manga. And it's going to be the second manga I've ever bought. And I was fully invested. And so after that, I kind of just binged the rest of the manga for the next maybe month. So I didn't binge it that hard. I just buy a book, and then when I get there, I'd read a volume or half a book a night. And then, I have to wait till Amazon delivers the next one. And then we went from there, basically.
Wow. All right. Very good. Well, I watched the anime like last year, and I binged it all pretty much. I'd watched I specifically remember watching the first 4 episodes at once, just because I was so hooked to it. Like I really liked it.
Those first 4
like I remember because yeah, like I remember because last year I was watching a lot of anime with my roommate, and like out of all the series we saw, Vinland Saga was the one that definitely hooked me like from the beginning. Where I was like, this is some good stuff. Like I know it. But anyway, yeah, I liked it. And here we are reading the manga finally after another year probably. It was probably mid last year, honestly, that I started.
Yeah, and how did the anime continue? What were your opinions on it?
You mean like from those 4 episodes, onwards?
Yeah.
I really liked it. Yeah.
Did you
like? I think.
Yeah. Carry on.
I mean, the 4 episodes hooked me, and that's like I kind of consider the first 4 differently because that was the first session. Like I watched it and I ended it on that session. But yeah, honestly, it was just great from there. Like the whole story, I think.
Okay. So you didn't feel like it was slowing in pacing or anything like that. You didn't feel like it was.
No, not at all.
All right. Okay. Cool.
I think what I did notice was that it felt very distinct from a lot of other anime I've seen. I don't know what it is, but like it felt more serious. Not serious, but like it didn't have many anime tropes or anything. Like it felt very different in a way. Like, and that kind of appealed to me as well. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe it's because I'm a European and I'm white, and I've grown up in the Anglosphere pretty much exclusively. That like stories that are based in a history that I've studied in class particularly enthralled me. So I've also read Vagabond, which is also a historical manga. But because I didn't know the actual character from history as much for the time, it kind of made me want to go away and study that and then come back to it. But because I already knew a little bit about the Vikings and particularly, lots of this first arc is spent in England, that was like, oh, I know this stuff. The backgrounds look like stuff I've seen. The author's done his research. And it's similar with like even fantasy stuff like Fullmetal Alchemist. Like that one's a particular favorite of mine because it still has that European early 20th century vibe to the costumes and whatnot. Even though because that's the main setting. But anyway, I like to ask you. So you talked about those first 4 episodes. Those lots of those basically. All of those first 4 episodes are in this volume, apart from maybe the first 2 chapters. How did you feel about this? Because this is the key difference between the anime and the manga is how chronologically the points of the story are told. Because the anime goes fully chronologically, while this one goes back to a flashback. So how do you feel like that compared? And there was any major differences this time around?
So I mean, I noticed it. Like, obviously, the chapter 1 opens with that fight in the. I'm going to be so bad at pronunciation, but the Franks. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't like I like it either way. I think honestly, like it didn't really. I thought the anime works just because it's like a typical story where you're just going chronologically, but the manga works equally well to me, where it's like you're kind of. I mean, that ends with like, them mentioning Thor's death, right? And then it kind of flashes back to show how he died and everything. And I don't know, like to me, it's not a big deal either way. Like it was fine, honestly. Yeah. Is that like a big thing that people?
Well, I mean, that's probably the main. I mean, so basically, the anime's generally incredibly well received. Most people be like, yes, it's a good, if not very good adaptation. But some people, some people like Kyle would be a bit more extreme. I mean, that's how I found his YouTube channel. With him dunking on the anime.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard of his like famous video that has like half or more than half dislikes or whatever. I really want to watch that one day. I'm interested to see.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty rambly and you can understand why, but it's also one of those classic like very nitpicky. And I'm not a big fan of general like negative stuff, but when he talks like why he prefers it in the manga, he generally talks about like stuff he finds interesting and like helps make the manga look better rather than just push the anime down, which he does. He's a bit dismissive. And I mean, that was a while ago, so I'm sure his opinions have changed. But yeah, I mean, for a lot of people, because, for example, it almost feels like the meaning of the first chapter it almost feels a bit fillery in the anime because it just kind of comes out here we're fighting. The point of this in the manga, the point of having that first chapter is to hook you on the violence, basically. Be like, oh, look at this cool guy. He's got a sword in his mouth. Oh, look, he's kind of like Zorro or whatever from One Piece. And then, there's got this, and it initially establishes the main 2 characters you need to look out for is Askeladd and Thorfinn. Those are the main 2 that is coming around, then it spoils it. While then in the anime, it focuses a lot on Thors. And for me, I think that's for the best, because I prefer Thors as a character to those 2 characters in the prologue. But it kind of, but like it just means that like every website that talks about um, the anime is like, oh, because in the manga the father's character dies in the second, like is revealed in the second chapter or so, or maybe even in the first chapter. Like for the anime, they spoil it in their little preview and saying like on Mao, I'm pretty sure they say, oh, the son tries to avenge his father. While in the anime, you spend like 3 episodes with this dude, and you're like, oh, I don't want him to die, and then you get spoiled that he dies by people innocuously explaining the story. But
it is true, but I feel like the anime does there's always, at least when I was watching it, there was always this sense of like, not dread, but like this sense that he was going to die. Like it did feel like it, at least towards say episode 3 and 4, definitely.
For sure.
Like that's when, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it matters too much either way, but yeah, it's just one of those interesting little tidbits.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you notice any other, like, did you feel like you enjoyed it where you was hooked this time around? Or, because I noticed that you said you were reading 1 chapter a day, and then you finished the last 8 chapters in a day. Is there a reason for that, or do you just...
Well, I think there was, because it's split into like 3 parts. So you've got like that introductory flash forward bit, and then you've got some time in Iceland, I think is the location.
Yes.
And then you start the actual journey to Jomsburg. Is that where they were going and how it's pronounced?
Yeah, I think so. Or they're at least going to England to fight somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think essentially when I like really got into it is when that journey began, I think. And that's when I started I basically read that whole last section in like 1 or 2 days or something. And it's, I don't know if it's particularly like, because I was more invested or anything. It just felt easier to read in a way. I don't know. Like maybe it's stuff I'm more familiar with in a way. I don't know. But I would say definitely that last part is the most interesting of these 3 parts for me in this first 16 episodes or chapters. But yeah, all good stuff.
That's interesting, because I would also say, I mean, I do love the flashbacks on Island, and I think I definitely prefer them in the anime just because the music and the environmental painting is just like, it adds in a few extra small scenes of like what their life is like on the farm. It's these small little details that really bring it to life. In the manga, I mean, it's also good, but this is at the point where the art isn't as good because it's still on a weekly schedule. It then goes to a monthly schedule later. And
I thought the art was fantastic.
Yeah,
like that's the first thing. That's one of my notes actually. Where I'm like, the art is just great from the start. Like particularly, there's like this whenever he's drawing like the ocean. Essentially, I'm like, man, this looks so good.
Yeah, I mean, Yukimura is a fantastic author, artist, particularly, and he only gets better as he spends more time on it. And while his production has definitely slowed, it's more for his own sustainability as an author. Like people are like, oh, Vinland Saga has been going on for 17 years now. So since 2005.
Jesus.
But he's only done 100 and he's only on chapter 192. But like yeah, I mean, this is just kind of how it is. If you read the notes, have you read any of the notes in the manga? Like, so when you're reading, he's got some author notes and stuff like that where he makes some small comments about his research.
Like, is it like translation notes or like?
No, it'll be like in the middle. I'm not sure. Let me just check my volume if there are some. Yeah, there are some. Like for example, in this one. Oh no, yeah, he's got. It's like afterwards.
I think I have.
Yeah.
I read everything that was there.
All right,
I remember he like added a little like manga at the end of him. I think like traveling as well. That was interesting.
Oh yeah, that's a cute one.
Yeah,
nice.
It is. Yeah, I do like those like bonus little things at the end.
Yeah. Him and his wife traveling. That's cool. Yeah, well, keep on reading those because it gives a little details. But he's a father of 3, and fatherhood in Vinland Saga. I mean, he's like becoming a father of more children as he goes throughout the story, basically, as he continues to write.
Wow. Yeah.
But like Vinland Saga, you got a lot of fatherhood themes in it, so it's interesting to see how he as an author kind of tackles it. But yeah, basically, like I think it's after maybe chapter 17, so he starts having more time, and the progression is slow. But by the time you get to the end of where the anime is. The art's pretty fantastic. And he gets
Yep.
because in this volume, like it's still good, but they're very much more cartoonily drawn in their facial compositions lots of the time. While they get a lot more realistic, I'd say. It still maintains that anime quality. So it's not something like a Vagabond where it becomes super realistic.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, it's like, I mean, I didn't notice really the art changes the first time I read round, but it's only once you look back that you see the big differences.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good art so far.
Good.
No complaints from me.
Good.
So I've got a bunch of, I don't know, what have I got to cover? So I've got a bunch of, or a few standout scenes that I've got. And then most of my notes here are basically about characters, just because I think this early stuff is a lot of just character stuff, in my opinion.
Cool.
So I think that's what the bulk of this will be. But yeah, the standout scenes. So in these first 16 chapters, the first one that really stood out to me was the dead slave. And particularly when they're at Iceland, and Leif is like having a conversation. I think it's pronounced Leif. Leif is having a conversation with Thorfinn and describing why the I don't remember the detail. I think it was the Vikings, why they ran away from wherever they were. And essentially Thorfinn is like, "Oh, my people aren't cowards. We wouldn't do that." And then he runs in and sees Thors, who's like just dedicating all of his like effort and being into reviving this slave who's just trying to be free. And it's just such a perfect, like, it shows everything you need to know about Thors and like what he stands for, and like answers Thorfinn's question without saying anything. And it's just such a perfect, like, I don't know, depiction of it. So yeah.
Yeah. So
that was a great scene.
So Leif can be pronounced Leif or Leif, I think.
Leif. Okay.
I say Leif because that's how I heard it first, but I think Leif is more accurate. I don't know though. I haven't looked it up. But yeah. Feel free to do either.
Cool.
Yeah, it's interesting you picked that up because I think it is mentioned, like Ylva talks about, all these other families here have slaves. Why can't we have a slave? And then Thor's just like, we don't do that here. And then, but yeah, but then this other slave comes along. She finds him in the snow, and then, then Thor's set to revive them. But I like how you link how, like, Leif is talking about how his family, Thorfinn's family, ran away to Iceland or something, and then Thorfinn's like, why would they leave? They're not cowards. And then, as you say, like, they answer Thors gives you his answer there that, he's, at least in some ways, very, very different to society, and we don't know quite yet how he is, but the fact that he's trying to revive a slave when many would just a slave that's not even his own. Like, if it's your own property, it makes sense to keep them alive. But if it's someone else's slave, there's no reason for you to get yourself entangled in that mess, as we do find out later.
Absolutely. And it's the fact that the slave itself is like escaping for freedom as well, which I don't know. Like, there's a lot of themes here that I'm just trying. Like, I don't know what I'm saying is actually accurate or not, but I guess we'll see as we go on. But yeah, good scene.
Yeah, I guess. What is your perspective on the theme so far? Maybe we get that later on.
Oh boy.
Maybe let's do that later on. How about that? Continue on your other big moments you want to talk about.
All right. That's probably the biggest one. I got 3 other just kind of small things, I guess. So the first one was Thor's grabbing the knife that Thorfinn finds, and just that visual of it, of him just grabbing it and him bleeding and stuff. I thought that was really cool. Also cool in the anime from memory. Like, I did like that. The first scene, which I mentioned about the dead slave, I don't remember like that impacted me at all when I watched the anime, but it definitely did in the manga.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, the second one, grabbing the knife, great. What else is there? I wrote the whole boat stuff. Oh yeah, essentially everything on the boat with Thors and Askeladd.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. So essentially just all that stuff, which is so great. Like, I have a lot more notes on this later, obviously, but just seeing both of them on display on who they are, and it's interesting. Like, I don't know if I know really what happened there and what was actually being fought and like really what was going on in that scene, but I liked it. It feels like there's a lot more going on there than just a simple fight between two people. So I like that.
That's very interesting. It's a good thing to pick up on. That fight has a lot of subtext to it that you only really understand retroactively. So the fact that you picked up on that something's bigger going on, that's only credit to you.
Oh, thank you. Well, the last one is not a scene at all, but it might be my favorite visual, ironically, in all of this manga, which is just that single just text thing of just saying father is dead. And it's just a black background, and it's like Thorfinn when he notices or realizes that Thors is dead, and it's just so simple and like takes up the page, and I love it.
Wow.
Simple things like that, yeah. Definitely stood out to me. That's maybe my favorite, just, I don't know, it's so good. Like, I love it so much. Yeah, in all of the stuff I've read, I'm like, man, this really, like, I lingered on that a bit. I just stood there, I'm like, man, this really affects him.
Wow, anyway. Okay, I've never, clocked, really thought too much about this.
That didn't stand out to you?
No, because it's right after the classic page of Thors being studded with arrows. So if anybody wants to find it, it's in probably chapter 16. After, the classic Thors' his face shaded out as he's got bombarded by arrows and Thorfinn's at his knees. Then father's dead. Okay, that's that's why I love getting new people's perspectives on this manga. Or just in manga.
That's probably something I should also mention, that when I watched the anime, I didn't interact with any fandom at all. So I don't know anything of like what people think about the anime, the manga, like nothing. Like the only things I really know are like I know like two characters. Essentially everything I know is from like your thumbnails or like small things I've heard from like Kyle, who like on his streams or something. Like I really don't know anything.
That's good.
I don't know people's opinions on stuff. Yeah, I'm really interested. See what happens, but yeah. So those are my 4 standout scenes.
Nice. So
now,
characters.
So many characters, man. Or at least so much character stuff. But the first thing about characters I've got is that it feels like in this story, more so than like any other stories I've really read, it feels like a lot of the characters are very, like, they're embodiments of their themes in a way. Like, essentially, I've got like 3 examples here, which is, you got Gorm, which is Askeladd's uncle, I think.
Yes.
And essentially every scene you get of him is about money and wealth, or like material desires or something. So he doesn't really get a scene other than that, which is interesting. It's not I like it, essentially. It's not something bad. The second thing is, obviously, we get Thors, and pretty much every scene involving Thors is about his philosophy, which I'm not really clear on at the moment, really, what his philosophy is. But essentially everything is about it. Like all his actions and every scene we get of him, it really focuses on that. And then the last example I've got is Halfdan.
Yeah.
Which is that slaver guy. And essentially everything he does is about chains and slavery and like order and obeying and things like that. Which is interesting. Like, you don't get much of these characters doing anything other than what their theme is, in a way, which I thought was pretty unique, and I liked it.
Yeah. And in turn, did you feel like Askeladd at all? Because he's another, or Thorfinn were playing into a big theme.
So, yeah, I don't know. The thing is with Thorfinn and Askeladd, because I've seen the anime and I know where they go, it's very tough, and I also don't remember that well, I guess, like the specifics of like what happened, especially with Askeladd, like with his backstory and everything. I'm a bit hesitant to kind of frame everything in his theme in a way, because I don't, specifically with him, I have a lot of, like, I want to see where my understanding evolves, I guess, because I've got like half-baked ideas of his backstory when I'm trying to read these scenes, and I'm not sure I really understand like what motivates him and stuff yet. So I think I'm a bit more ambiguous on whether everything he does is like about his theme.
Okay.
And Thorfinn, I feel like I haven't seen too much of him. I've just seen him as a kid. Kind of, how would I describe him? He feels like a typical product of his environment in a way. And he loves his dad a lot. But I feel like he has a few, I don't know, he like plays with kids and stuff. Not everything he does is about like whatever his theme will be in the end, which I don't know what it is really at this point. So yeah, that's how I'd answer those two characters.
Yeah. Do you have any other things on any specific characters you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, so I've got particularly for Thors, and Askeladd, I've got two big things that I just want to try and they're like rambling in a bit, but like
That's fine.
I have a lot to say on them essentially. So should I start off with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So with Thors, I thought the first thing to note was that what that was interesting was that his philosophy seemed very personal. Like he doesn't push it on other people, which is a really it's not what I would expect from someone who's like so strong about their beliefs. Um, so I'm not sure what that says about him, like on what even that how that even informs what his philosophy is in a way. Like, because essentially, me when I was trying to understand like what is like I don't know if I understand what Thor's really believes in a way, which is I'm not sure if we're meant to at this point either, but I know that he says that like a warrior doesn't need a sword essentially, and like that could have a bunch of meanings. Like I've written a few here, which is like, does it mean that he like a perfect warrior is someone who can like take out people without needing to kill them, for instance? Like is an element of like mastery of your skills or something? Is that what he's trying to say? Where it's like, if he can take out all of his enemies without needing to permanently like kill them or anything, is that what he would consider perfect? Or is it more like a psychological thing, whereas like, is he perfect once he can like psychologically get to people so that he can show them or he can diffuse the situation without harming anyone? Like, is that what he means by you don't need a sword? Or is it more the fact that he's selfish and he has people that he cares about, and because of that, because what I'm trying to do is I'm tying two lines here together, which is a warrior doesn't need a sword, and then the other line he says about not being perfect because he still relies on his sword. And I wonder like if he is relying on that sword because of his family in a way. Like that's another possible interpretation, basically. But essentially it breaks down into like a utilitarianism kind of argument where it's like if you donate to a charity that's making mosquito nets, like you would save incalculable lives and make the world such a better place than if you were to pay for like a hospital care for your sick child, for instance. I'm like, is that something kind of what he's going at, you know?
Okay.
Like, it's like that's another way of doing it. And I don't know which one of these it is. And I don't know if I'm meant to know at this point. But I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
that's my rambling about Thors and trying to understand what's going on in his head.
Yeah. So I guess I was trying to decide on whether I should disclose my opinions on what it means. But I mean, you've certainly got the correct idea that the big thesis statement for all of Vinland Saga is Thors' statement of a true warrior needs no swords. Needs no sword.
Yep.
He also makes another remark early on is that you don't have enemies. And so
true, yeah.
Like this first book and Thors as a character, Thors is weird because he does have character motivations and small things in there. For example, like he stopped becoming a Viking, as we see, as he explains to Ari, because of Ylva's birth. Because he's a father, he sees further beyond than just his own purview, I guess, and he decides to run away to Iceland. That's also one of those interesting things that, like, because Yukimura is having his first child at exactly the same time that he's writing Thors. I wonder if that's something that Yukimura also realizes in his own life or something he's writing there. But yeah, kind of this development of what is a true warrior is something that Vinland Saga wrestles with a lot. It may not always seem like everything is piling into it, but I mean, like we just got a chapter, one of the most latest chapters. It has kind of almost clarified what it is to be a true warrior in Yukimura's opinion. But yeah, you'll see the evolution of this idea, and I think you've caught on to the main thing with Vinland Saga is that while it is plot, it's got great characters, it's got great plot, it's got intense writing. The primary way I find to enjoy Vinland Saga is to look at it through a thematic lens, because this is very much a thematic piece where the author has something he wants to say, he wants to explore, and that's why he's writing this big epic. He knows how he wants to end it, even though the ending hasn't happened. and he just wants to keep on developing these ideas as a human, and then trying to portray it in his writing as a medium, which I think wholly makes Vinland Saga incredibly unique in at least the anime manga sphere. I mean, maybe I'm incorrect and I just haven't looked into other things as deeply, but even something like Berserk feels very much like a personal writing that he loves, but he's writing about things from his own life and really drawing upon that. That's what Miura kind of felt like he's drawing upon. I felt, at least. And even stuff like, I mean, every anime has themes, but Vinland Saga is noticeably committed to its own themes. In every single way. Yeah. Every single theme that will be brought up can somehow be linked into this overall thesis statement that Thors is making here. And so, yeah, I think that's something that even when I wasn't liking as much where the plot was going or the characters, I could think to myself, why is this a thematic thing? Why has Yukimura put this in here? Why has he shown it?
Yeah.
And that's because that's what Yukimura wants to focus on. And then that helps me get thinking in maybe not in the right direction, because I wouldn't say there's a right way to read it, but I think to get the most enjoyment out of Vinland Saga, that's the best way to do it. And I mean, there's lots of stuff that Yukimura doesn't show, and that people don't like. He shifts focus sometimes, quite dramatically, and that loses some readers who aren't invested for the thematic reasons. But I'd say this final arc, for me, is released very slowly. It's only 20 pages a month, basically. This last month, Yukimura even apologized on Twitter, because he just
I heard about that.
Didn't hand in his papers all the time, and he was like, "Oh, I'm very embarrassed as a professional that I did this," and I was like, "Oh, whatever, mate. I'll be here whenever you release your next." I didn't really mind that much, but even when in the final parts of Vinland Saga where the plot hasn't picked up yet. The characters are getting developed, but very slowly. You feel this tension, and the tension is there. What is Yukimura going to do with the themes? How is he going to resolve this big statement? What is he going to say? And so I think the fact that you've kind of caught on to this thematic undertone of a lot of things is, as I said before, to your credit. So sorry for my big ramble.
No, I mean, I love that kind of stuff. Like how I said I basically binge this part on the boat, like in a day. It's because of this thematic stuff, I think. Like, because I feel like there's so much going on here that I'm not understanding yet, and I like trying to piece it together, and then eventually seeing how it lines up with like not what it really is, because I guess what it really is what you make it, but like what becomes clearer over time. Like, I'm interested to see how it changes, but I like not knowing stuff and trying to figure it out, essentially, with the themes, especially. And I feel like this boat stuff works really well with that.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot of Thors.
Yeah, I will spoil maybe one thing, and just this is for Askeladd, because you said you didn't pick up a thematic thing because you are worried about allocating him something that he may not be, because you're tying together your memory of his history. From anime. So this is something that is from chapter 1 where he talks with Gorm, his uncle, and he basically makes the Kenny quote of "everyone's a slave to something."
Absolutely.
And so I think there's very much, if you look at Askeladd through that lens, particularly thematically, and how he views other people and how he views himself, that will help enlighten his character a lot. Because unlike Kenny, who kind of makes this statement retroactively talking about his life, Askeladd makes this at the very start. And so kind of like Thors is like, well, what do you mean by this? What do you actually mean by this? And in the current example, he talks, he says everybody's a slave to someone, and then he makes it very clear that he's talking about, Thorfinn being able to be controlled also by his rage, because Thorfinn is a slave to his vengeance. For example. But then you think about lots of other characters in the prologue, like I think Bjorn is introduced, and be like, okay, so what is Bjorn's thing? And you think about, well, what is Bjorn a slave to? What is Thor's a slave to? What is every single character a slave to in some regard? And then you kind of get a clarification of what that means, and eventually you find out what Askeladd is a slave to, and how is he different from the rest of the cast? And so that's one of the interesting things I think about Askeladd.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, you're talking about the boat. They have this whole thing where they talk about the smell of each other, which is kind of weird. I mean, like, I think initially you're just like, okay, this is a very anime kind of just like, oh, are they going to introduce some super secret powers or something? But a little bit of a spoiler, smell is never brought up again in the rest of the in the manga, as far as I'm concerned. Okay. So it's a very short term, almost thematic thing that helps the underlying subtext to the scene. Sorry, so I'm not sure. Do you want to talk about anything else? I'll let you kind of keep on doing your thing. I just
in regard to I guess it can transition from there. So in regard to Askeladd, I don't think I've really got anything too important. I'm just scanning over here. I think what more in regards to both of these characters, I was trying to figure out what's happening with their battle that they have, because you've got, I mean, what it boils down to is in the end when Thors wins, Askeladd asks him to be their leader in like a joking manner. Well, obviously he means it. I mean, in my opinion, he definitely means it, and then plays it off as a joke. And I kind of wonder why. And what this might not be right, but like what I was thinking is, if the battle that's happening between them is more about who has the most conviction in their beliefs, in that, for instance, you've got Askeladd challenging Thors by seeing him first Thors wins, and then Askeladd challenges Thors by saying if he will lead their band, and then Thors does not waver. Like, he's not going to become like Askeladd, and he's not going to kill people. He's not backing off from his belief. And then you've got Bjorn going and then targeting or like using Thorfinn as a hostage, and Askeladd doesn't tell him to stop or anything. And Thors wavers a little bit, but in the end, he still stays true to himself, and he doesn't like. He essentially like he puts the sword to Askeladd's neck and whatever, and he doesn't kill anyone, and he doesn't end up killing Askeladd or killing Bjorn or anything. He stays true to himself again, and then eventually Thors throws his sword in the river, and then at that point is when Askeladd acknowledges that Thors won the battle, which is a very interesting thing. Like, he didn't have to do that, and he seemed like he didn't want to acknowledge it that he won, but that's the point at which he won, when he threw his sword away. Is what I noticed, at least. And I feel like it's essentially Askeladd telling Thors that he realized at that point that he can't waver Thors' belief. I did write this here, that I wonder if that is implying that Thors is the one person where he can't be manipulated. Like, he can be, but it ties back to his like, everyone is a slave to something, and like how there's a way to trick every human being, but Thors is so stuck, like so true to himself and his belief that he's not going to be manipulated in this way. And that's why Askeladd acknowledges that that he lost that battle and that Thors won, because he like kind of he proved a little bit that Askeladd's like fundamental belief is a bit off. But yeah, so that's my piece on that. But I don't know if any of that is true, but that's just what I got reading through the first time. So I'm interested to see what happens when I go back and read it, when I've read more.
That's a very interesting reading. It reminds you, I need to rewatch a video of I mean, he's only made one video, but it's all on Thors, and he's planning on making I think other ones. It's like deep dives into themes. I like to hear his opinion again on it, because he goes into a lot into the scene, and I've thought about the scene quite a bit, and he had a different take. But there's ultimately like a reason. It's like, why does Thors not ultimately accept Askeladd's offer? That would save everybody's life practically. In that utilitarian ethical framework that you're kind of talking about earlier, that would be the best thing for Thors to do. Yet he doesn't choose that choice, and he says no. And that's one of those things where people are like, oh, plot, that doesn't make any sense, But if you think about it from a thematic standpoint, kind of like how you just did, and I didn't even really think about it being a battle for Thor's ideals, but it's almost like I'm not sure how much I want to say. But it's almost like Askeladd's in that asking that question. If Thors answers yes, I'll become your leader, Askeladd's almost in a way, Askeladd's that almost like makes Askeladd maybe not want him to be his leader. You know, Askeladd's almost testing him.
Yeah.
As you say. So like, if Thors did accept it, then Askeladd may be like, oh well, I don't want you actually to be my leader. I don't know. That's something to ponder. I never really thought about it in that manner before. Because yes, I think most people think that Askeladd is being very genuine here when he's asking for him to be his leader. That if you think back to the anime, it does come back to surface. And yeah, it's kind of like, it's one of those things that gives a small inkling to Askeladd's character. There's also a small note, I'm not sure if you noticed it, but Askeladd swears on his father at different times. But those...
Olaf, right?
Olaf, yes. But then he swears on another character later. So yeah, Olaf the first time.
Oh. And
then the second time when he's more serious, he swears on another character. So if you want to go back and maybe look at that, that's another way of discerning whether Askeladd is being genuine or not. Because if you remember slightly to his backstory, he hates his father.
Yeah.
But there's another figure in his lineage that he prefers a lot more. And so when he swears on that person...
Artorias or something. That's vaguely coming back to me.
Yes.
Artorias or something?
Artorias.
Yeah.
So he swears on Artorias the second time before he kills Thors.
Yeah. Man.
So that's one of those small other, like, it's like, why does he swear on two different people? And then you like find later on. But because you watched anime, I felt like kind of
that's
pointing it out.
That's a great thing. I didn't pick up on it because I don't know, it didn't cross my mind. That's a great point. Okay. Really cool. I'm gonna pay attention to that and going forward, man. Cool.
No worries. Are there any other characters you wanna?
So I've got some very minor stuff. So we got, I'm very interested to see how Ylva's story goes. Like if she comes back at all. I know in the anime, like she didn't come back. I mean, maybe she had one scene or something from memory, but like she didn't become a character or anything. Because to me, it's really interesting because she is also Thors's. I guess she's Thor's first born. But she's a typical like resident of her times, like similar to Thorfinn, I guess, where like she wants a slave. I guess it really just comes down to that, the fact that she wants a slave. Like she feels like she's a very normal person in those times, just like another person in Thor's village, and not similar to Thor's in any way, like in his philosophy. And the fact that she's older as well, like I can excuse it for Thorfinn just because he's so young and maybe he wouldn't understand it. Or he definitely wouldn't understand it. But she is a bit older, and I figured maybe he would have got through to her a bit, and I don't know. But so I'm interested to see if she does come back to the story, what impact she has on it. Yeah, that's Ylva.
Okay. It's interesting you bring that up because there's two things that Vinland Saga kind of vaguely tackles. The main one, which is violence. You can see that through Thorfinn, and what he eventually becomes, and what his teachings are. But there's a second one that's slavery and freedom, those themes. And Ylva is almost the other one. So Thorfinn's fully into the idea of fighting. He play fights with the other children. And then he eventually becomes this little gremlin that wants to avenge his father and kill Askeladd. Ylva's portrayed as differently early on, because she's like this other, like setting up this other thing that she all cares about slaves, because she does too much work. It's too much work. It'll be a lot easier if they just own some slaves. And this is a big thing on Iceland, at least, because you have Halfdan as a character who's and I mean, there's almost this dramatic irony to Ylva's story that she wants to do less work, but as you'll see later on in like just a little short scene, that she has to do more work because her father dies and her male sibling leaves, and in those times, I mean, to be fair, she's incredibly strong genetically, but having more strength and more work capacity as a guy compared to a girl, that does translate to how much work you can get done, at least in Vinland Saga. And so you'll see this chapter later on, but basically Ylva gets the opposite of what she wants. Instead of doing less work, she has to do more work. And this is like you'll see it in the next read you do, because it's just like a little spin-off chapter. But yeah, interesting you picked on that. It'll be interesting to see your opinions on Ylva as the story progresses, because she does return. I will confirm that now. She does return.
Very good. I'm glad to hear it. Okay. So I got a few more characters. We have Floki. So the only note I've got here is that I wonder why he doesn't want to be associated with Thors' death. And obviously there's a bunch of reasons for that. But the ones I've got here is maybe he is conspiring against the leader of the Jomsvikings. Maybe he loved Helga, because the Helga was the daughter of the Jomsvikings leader, I think. And the only other note here I've got is I wonder how he got his scar, and if it's related to that as well. Because obviously his eye has a big scar on it. But yeah, that's all I've got for Floki. I'm just interested to see what his motivations are, really, because I haven't really I don't remember anything from the anime really about it, and I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, interesting. You brought up that he loved Helga. I'd never thought about that before, but that could be interesting, because Floki is a mysterious character. I like his scar for his eye will be revealed, but not for quite a long time.
Wow.
I will say that right now.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and not wanting, just going for the chieftain of the Jomsviking. He's definitely a political schemer. I think that's what you find out. This early on. He does appear again in the prologue, but he's never really the focus, but you will definitely see him. You just may have forgotten when he shows up in the anime, because I did as well, honestly. So, yeah. Cool.
No, but I right now I like him. Every scene I get of him, I'm like, this is good. Get more info. Now, you might expect this to be a big character, but I've only got one note, and that's Thorfinn. So when the Jomsvikings arrive at Iceland, I at least that's what I've written here, but I don't remember distinctly when it happens. But Thorfinn questions whether his mother and sister, whether they can't go to Valhalla because they aren't powerful warriors. And I think that's the first time I've seen him kind of doubt his upbringing and his like culture and religion and all that, which I thought was interesting. Like, I don't know how that will tie in with what happens with him eventually, but I thought that was interesting. That's the first time he's doubted his convictions and the things he believes. Like, for instance, that thing I mentioned before about when Leif is telling him the story of how the Vikings or whatever left Norway or something. I don't really know the geography stuff, but like then he wouldn't believe anything that Leif was saying. And he's like, he's not even going to question it. Like, he went to his dad to kind of confirm that this is a lie. But this time he's beginning to question like something about his upbringing and how it seems contradictory. So I'm interested to see if that gets followed up at all. But that's all I've got about Thorfinn, which is pretty funny to think about.
Where is this point? Because I never picked up on that before. They asked about the Valhalla for his sister.
I really hope it was Thorfinn. Let me see if I've written it. Which chapter it was? Chapter 5. I've got it.
Chapter 5.
So when they're taking, so it starts with the Vikings are bathing, and then Floki arrives at the island. Iceland, sorry.
Yeah, so he's on the ground with, I think the guy's name is Foxy. Hold on. Yeah, the Valkyries will come and die on the battle. Then you can go to Valhalla and feast on meat every day. Oh, I get it now. You'd like to do that, wouldn't you? But you can't just die, right? They only let powerful warriors into Valhalla. Does that mean my mother and sister can't go to Valhalla? That's a great. I can't believe I've never picked up on that before. Oh, this is what I love. Great little pickup. Yeah. So now you say that, I'm trying to busy fit that into my picture of Thorfinn.
It's a very small thing. It might not even eventuate to anything, but I found it pretty interesting.
I think it definitely does. I think.
Okay.
So, is this? No. So you haven't actually got to this part. I was wondering if it's the end of the first chapter or it's the end of his first fight with Thorkel. I think it's the latter. Yeah, it's the latter. But it kind of gives more context to Thorfinn's character. I so there's two things about Thorfinn. Lots of people say prologue Thorfinn, so the parts covered in the anime,
Yep.
is very one note, and in a way he is. But like a lot of characters there will seem one note in Vinland Saga. If you dig into the subtleties of what they're saying, you do get more character to them. And I think what you picked up here is at least a good foundation, because the Valkyries do come up again. The idea of Valhalla. Norse belief in Vinland Saga is generally undermined and at least given a skeptical approach to. Christianity somewhat as well, but Christianity at least is given some more positive limelight. So people who really like Norse mythology can feel like Yukimura focuses too much on the Valhalla side of the Norse, even though it is a really big deal. Anyway, I'm not super studied on it, but yeah. Anyway, that's a very interesting pickup, and
I mean, I should also mention that, like, when it comes to Vikings and this period of history, I know basically nothing. Like, I was so glad to see that in one of these chapters or volumes or something, there was a map of the world, or at least the section of the world that the story focuses on. I was so happy. Because I'm like, I don't know where Iceland is in relation to England, and like, I don't know what the Franks even is, and like, there's so much. I don't know anything about Vikings, really.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. Like, I know there's a big Vikings
So the Franks are the
show,
French,
I haven't
basically.
seen that. Like, right.
Because they speak French in that chapter, but the Frankish kingdoms, I guess, like, it's not one big France like it is today, but generally think of that as France. Maybe get out Google Maps and start looking at Europe. I'd say that's one thing that probably intrigued me more, because as someone who's grown up in Europe, I just know European geography, generally, particularly Western European geography. So this is this is happening in my back door.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting.
My back door garden. So I'm kind of lucky in that regard. But yeah, definitely use it as an opportunity to learn the geography of the area, because they do march around it a lot. So yeah. Are there any other characters you want to talk about? So you talk about Floki, Ylva.
No, so I mean, those are all the characters I've got notes on. But the last thing in like the character section I've got is things I hope to find out eventually.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
So the first one was about the Floki. So I already talked about that one. Just want to find out what's like motivating Floki. So we've talked about that. I want to know about what, like, I know we've already got this a little bit, but what made Thors change? Like, I know what we've got is that when he had his firstborn daughter, I guess, that's when he changed. But I wonder if it was the love for his wife, or if it was the love for his child, or it was just the love of a family, or whether it was something else. Now, I don't know if we like, even if we don't get anything else, I think there's enough there now that I'm like, this is perfectly fine. But I would be interested, like, I'd be glad to see more info about this, like this period of time, I guess, where he had his transition. And I know we do, like, I remember a scene with Thorkel, and he, like, Thors knocks out Thorkel or something. So I know we get at least one more scene, but I hope we get more eventually.
Yeah,
but...
so you get one scene there, and then maybe there's only one other scene that's a flashback. Which, so Thors, I'd say, generally isn't expanded upon greatly, but those scenes do give him more, at least a few more glimpses into why he does what he does, and just where he is at that time. So I'd say the major reason he gives this time towards, seeing his child, that, that can be interpreted in many different ways, but that is one thing that I do think some people criticize. They like is Thors's. We haven't seen enough of Thors's backstory to warrant such a drastic change in character. And perhaps I personally feel like I was given enough, but also sometimes if you give too much, like Thors is very much like, because he's the thesis statement. He's also this like almost untouchable character. You'll see him referred a lot in the prologue by all these people like, oh, Thor's the troll of Yorm, as this just character that is almost godlike in a way, a legendary figure, and almost knowing some of his reasons, but not being super detailed on his backstory does, while he's shown to be very human, also gives this mystique to him. So it's an interesting push and pull, but yeah. So
I wonder, related to that, like my other thought I had was, I wonder if even if we never see anything from Thors again, I feel like we will understand what made him change through Thorfinn's journey. Like if that is Thorfinn's purpose, I guess, in this story, which it feels like, having, I guess, seen the prologue. But like I wonder, like, will the story, it seems ridiculous at this point, but will the story end with Thorfinn having a child as well, and then understanding what made Thor's change in that way? But I don't know. At this point, it seems ridiculous for that to be the ending, but I don't know. Like, I'm interested to see how Thorfinn's journey will, like, kind of elucidate what happened with Thor's in a way.
Yeah, definitely pay attention to that, I'd say. And I'd say in that regard, not every single answer has been answered yet. There's still the story's not finished. And so there's still questions about how he may tie back to Thor's more than we may realize. But yeah, there's elements of this, but it's also a key thing that despite Thor's being presented as such a legendary figure, he says he's not perfect because he has to use a sword. So in a way, it allows for Thor's to be succeeded. As Thor's wouldn't consider himself a true warrior yet. And so the rest of the story is, as I said, people trying to find out who a true warrior is. I won't disclose who. But yeah, that's generally how it is. But yeah.
Yes, looking forward to it. The last thing about what I'm hoping to find out eventually is why the manga is called Vinland Saga. So it's an interesting choice of a title because Vinland is, at least in this so far, what I've seen, Vinland is mentioned like twice. It's not a big deal yet or anything. I know in the anime it becomes a little bit more of a big deal when like Thorfinn tells the slave about it or something, or maybe that already happened in the manga. I don't know, but
it did. It happened in chapter 2.
Yeah, some of my memories are a bit mixed up, but yeah. So
I mean, it's one of the byproducts of having the manga and the anime told in different orders.
Yeah,
there's also some really subtle changes in order later on, which get really confusing. In the anime, at least. But yeah. Anyway, you probably won't notice them because their anime adds in a bit of filler, but it covers everything in the manga. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm interested to see why it's called Vinland Saga.
Vinland Saga. Well,
yeah.
I'd say in that case, don't follow any Wikipedia pages because this is a historical book. It's historical fiction, so it's loosely based off the real life adventures of Thorfinn Karlsefni.
Oh wow! Okay,
but it's expanded greatly upon. So if you look up a Wikipedia article of Thorfinn Karlsefni as a historical figure, it will spoil it. But here, so what do you think Vinland is at the moment?
Well, I know it's a actual place. Like I know because that's actually something I was I don't remember from the anime, but I know in the manga when Leaf talks about it, you see people you see the people that he saw. So I thought that was interesting. Like I don't remember if we got that in the anime.
And so do you know where this place is?
I have a guess. I don't know if I want to say it. I think it's America.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
That's my guess. I'm not
is
certain.
That based off the people you see?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I don't know. I don't know much about history or geography or anything, so it could be somewhere completely different, but that's what I would assume.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah. And then secondly, so Vinland is almost like two things, because so far, while it is a physical place, I think particularly in the prologue, it's kind of it's not just the prologue, but it's also like this almost metaphorical place as well, which ties into the themes of Vinland Saga. Somewhere not here, somewhere out of this awful hellhole you may find yourself in. And I think particularly in the prologue, you'll see lots of the characters bring up either Valhalla, heaven and the Judgment Day of Christianity, or maybe even Lucius Castus Artorius, particularly in the prologue. And, Thor's version of this and Leif's version of this is Vinland. And I guess Thorfinn's version of this is Vinland. So lots of people have these like mystical religious places you can go to. That is not here. But yeah, Vinland's another one of those kind of places. So yeah. So I mean it is interesting. Vinland Saga, as you pick up on the title, I wouldn't say until you get to the second arc that you really get clarified what the point of Vinland is. And it still kind of gets expanded upon. But yeah, like the prologue is really like one of the biggest filler arcs of all time, even though it's not really a filler arc, but it kind of it's one of those things that it does feel like it deviates. Like you kind of get lost in this arc and you're like, hang on, wait, what was the whole point of the story about? You get to the end of the anime and you're like, oh well, the main character died, Askeladd, right? And you're like,
yeah, that was wild.
Yeah. Like so it can leave you like almost a bit like unsure of what's going to happen next.
I mean, it was a shock to see that the episode was called like End of Prologue or something. Like I was like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming the chapter will be named the same thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's crazy. Love it. Very bold choice.
So I guess it's a bit hard to say because you do know where it's going, but I guess like with your current thoughts, what do you think a true warrior is? And how do you think the story will go after the end of the prologue chapter?
Oh boy. First part of the question: what is a true warrior?
I know you've expanded.
So the answer is that I don't know.
Yeah. Kind of
but if I was to make a guess, my best guess would be, a true warrior would be. I would say it's more on the psychological aspect of it, which is the true warrior is someone who doesn't need to fight people. Like he is like not he or she or whatever. That person who is a true warrior will be able to convince other people of their own philosophy that there's no need to kill other people. Like it's all like a true warrior is someone who doesn't need to fight, because they live in a world where everyone believes that they don't have to fight, if that makes any sense. Like a true warrior is someone who can convince others to believe in their own philosophy of not needing to fight or kill people.
It's almost this thought of when you learn martial arts, I haven't learned martial arts, but some martial art philosophy is like the best defense is never getting in the fight in the first place, because once you're in the fight, like only fight if you must. So yeah, so it's interesting that's kind of what you think at the moment. Well, we'll see if you're right or wrong. I don't want to say anything.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. Yeah.
Okay.
But in regards to the other thing of like what happens after the prologue, so I know 2 names of arcs. So that's kind of like a little spoiler, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to say them. Should I say them?
Yeah.
Or should I like?
Okay. Well, I guess if people are watching and reading along, you can kind of skip this part, I guess.
Yeah, I guess skip at this point. You got like 5 seconds here while we rambled on about nothing until
I'm sure I'll put a timestamp on the screen or something that you can flick to.
Indeed. So I guess I should also add here that I'll talk about basically everything I know at this point, so we can skip this section basically if you don't want to be spoiled on anything in the manga.
Well, to be fair, we did just we did assume that you know the anime, and just
yes, true. Okay.
Well, whatever.
So anything beyond the anime, because I know very little things, but I will say them all now. So you better skip that timestamp right now. But anyway, okay. So the 2 arc names I know, I don't know if these are arcs. I would assume they're arcs. I know there's something called the Baltic Sea War, because I know that thumbnail you made, and it was really cool.
Okay, cool.
One of the best thumbnails ever.
Nice.
So I'm assuming that's an arc. And I know there's something called a farmland arc. I would assume it's an arc as well. But those are the 2 things I know arc-wise.
Okay, cool.
What else? I'm trying to think what else I know. I know Ymir because you made a video about that, and I'm like, okay, I know Ymir as a character. I haven't seen any of your Vinland Saga videos, but I know the thumbnails and stuff. I know Hild is a big deal. I don't know what she is or like anything, but I know she is a big deal because you have a video and she seems like an important character, I would assume.
Well, I made it at the time because I liked the character, and then at the time, people were not liking the character as much, so I tried to explain why thematically she is interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was before I went on Twitter, and Twitter absolutely adores her as a character. I think it's because she gives lesbian vibes off, which people are drawn to a lot, particularly on Twitter. That's not like a condemnation of that in any way, shape, or form. It's just one of those funny things. Like, because I spent all my time on Reddit, and they have all these Reddit boys being kind of mad. I think underlying a few, there are genuine criticisms. I don't want to really explain too much, I guess. But
yeah, no,
she's definitely she's definitely one of my characters. I mean, I'll say this, like, one of the reasons why I'm also a big fan of Vinland Saga is because the aesthetic. I love the armor they wear, the kind of like the backgrounds and the places they are. But another thing I love about Vinland Saga are the scars. As you kind of talked with Floki, every single major scar generally has a story to it, and you'll see character designs progress through the story. And Hild, and I'm a bit like, just visually, I'm a big fan of like people with scars, whether it's Zuko from Avatar: The Last Airbender, or I'm not sure. Have you watched Black Lagoon? No, there's a character in that called Balalaika. She's got a lot of scars. There's also like Todoroki in My Hero Academia. These characters who have, I mean, like even Floki in this, have a badass scar of some type, particularly when it's around their eye. I find particularly just flat out cool design. There's lots I'm probably not thinking about. Thorfinn also gains scars. You'll see characters like Thorkel in fights he has. He changes his character design a lot. So it's just something I think is cool. I think actually maybe Askeladd gains a scar as well. It's these small details that I think elevate Yukimura's art a lot, and just kind of I like things that don't have to be there. You don't have to remember these things. Most characters, most people, it just kind of come up in one Reddit post one time, like, oh, Yukimura forgot the scars, whatever. But yeah. Anyway,
love it
a lot. So I will clarify that the Farmland arc is a major arc. I'm glad you don't know the proper name of it. I mean, Yukimura gave some proper names to stuff, and then but because stuff is translated so slowly, the fandom has different names for these things. Farmland arc, it kind of tells you what you need to know. But like, for example, this arc that for the anime is known as the War arc officially, but everybody calls it the prologue. Everybody calls it the prologue.
Yeah.
And the next one is the Farmland arc, and the one you called the Baltic Sea War. Lots of people will use that as the unofficial name for the third major arc, but it's technically actually a smaller. It's the major arc within a bunch of smaller mini arcs, if that makes sense. So it's like a grand arc that's kind of a bunch of smaller arcs put together. But the Baltic Sea War was like the main one. It's like 36 chapters or something, so it's a big chunky. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that's the end of the spoilers, I guess.
Yeah.
And at the end of my notes, mainly. The only other things I've got about the bonus volume pages. So we get the map of the world that I loved. That was so great. So handy to have. Like, I copied it and put it in my little document so I can look at it every now and then.
Okay, yeah.
I've got. There was a little layout of the house in Iceland, like Thorfinn's house. I thought that was really cool. And I thought it was cute how they all sleep in the same room. I'm sure that's like a historical thing. They probably used to do that, but I thought it was really cute.
Yeah. So this is so Yukimura, while he does play with the fictional aspects of what actually happened during that time, like, so characters like Thorkel, Canute, they're real historical figures. But what we know about people like Thorkel, we just know he's called Thorkel the Tall. So then Yukimura kind of elaborates on this thing, and then gets creative with how he can use them thematically and in this story.
Yeah.
But details like their houses, the weapons they use, the stuff they wear, that stuff is all very historically accurate. At least within, a few 100 years of the time period, there may be a few slight inaccuracies. But for example, you won't see any horned helmets in this manga, because that's not a thing the Vikings wore. But you will see that they have, round shields, bearded axes, a variety of spears and swords, and all these different things. So, yeah. One thing because you talked a lot on thematics. I think you missed one character. You may have not had any notes on him, but you kind of mentioned him earlier. Halfdan. Did you have any thoughts on him further? Just before we wrap things up, I guess.
Halfdan. I don't think so.
Okay.
I did have one note that I didn't include in this thing, but I think it was the fact that he didn't seem evil. Like he seemed like he challenged Thor's perspective a bit by having slaves and hurting them and everything, but Thor's didn't actively fight against him or anything, and it seemed like he didn't seem like an evil guy. In the end, he didn't go oh, because you've taken this slave, I'm gonna burn down your village or anything. He seemed okay, which was interesting. But I didn't make a note of it because I'm like, oh, I don't know what's gonna happen with this later. But
I see.
It's interesting.
Just to bring up, I'd say Thor's confrontation with Halfdan is like a mini version of his confrontation with Askeladd in a way, where it's that testing of Thor's ideals and seeing where he's at. Like, who's this Thor's guy, and why is he trading 8 whole sheep for the dead slave, or something like that? Because Ylva is very much the character we should be almost in the shoes of, that just doesn't make any rational sense.
Yep.
And you can also see that Halfdan gets a little bit infuriated by Thor's idealism. So he kind of milks him for what he's worth, just to test him. And once he finds he can't break him, he's just like, fine, this deal makes more sense for me anyway. I'll just take it. You're annoying.
No, I love that. I didn't pick that up. That's great.
I will also say that Halfdan. Well, yeah, I was going to ask this. You mentioned that Halfdan doesn't seem evil. Who would you think is evil in the story so far? Who's the main villain? Or do you have any further comments on that?
That's a great question. I feel like there's someone who's slipping my mind. Who is the main villain? I mean, the most deceptive and quote unquote evil person to me at the moment seems like Floki, but it's only because I don't understand him yet. I think. But unless there's someone else I'm forgetting. No one is jumping out to mind at the moment. Yeah, so I'd go with Floki for now, but I guess we'll see.
Okay, because it's interesting. Because Thor talks about you have no enemies, and I think Vinland Saga is what is written in such a way that I think makes lots of characters compelling, where there is no. You could say there's evil people, but there's no grand villain. Take Full Metal Alchemist, for example. There is no father. There's no one person behind the scenes that if you beat, you win. Vinland Saga is very much like the villain of the story is the society that they're in.
That's how it does feel like,
this is a society.
I think
maybe some people may say.
Maybe if I'm sure if I hadn't watched the anime, it probably would be Askeladd, I'm sure. At this point. But the fact that I know that he's not really a villain is kind of, at least in my opinion, is not really a villain. That's why I wouldn't point him out now immediately. But
I mean, for example, because you watch the anime, you could say King Sven is a villain.
Sure. If I were to include him,
But I mean, even retroactively, his actions. I mean, everybody's very understandable, given their positions at the time.
Absolutely.
And painting things in a black and white is not as, I guess, like that. I don't think that's what Yukimo is trying to get at. But definitely,
I mean, there's even
there's definitely characters that represents things, as you say. Lots of characters do represent pockets of this thematic idea. So there are kind of, I guess, villains, if you will. So,
Yeah, I mean, what I was gonna add is just like if I was to include the anime, you could even there's a way to argue that even Canute is the most evil character in a way, which I don't agree. Like I'd have to think that through. But I remember when I was watching, I remember like there was something that happened that I was like, this is a bit morally questionable. Like particularly more so than other things. Nothing, it doesn't jump out immediately, but that's also something I could consider.
Interesting.
Which kind of seems a bit contradictory because I feel like he was the like a moral kind of center a little bit later on, or maybe I don't know. I have a lot of mixed thoughts about it because I just don't remember too much.
He also,
so I'm interested to see what I think when the manga when I get to that part.
You've read Berserk, right?
Yeah.
He also gives off Griffith vibes.
Yeah,
I think
that is true.
In everybody's consciousness when they, particularly when I was reading it, even though I read Berserk afterwards, I still knew about Griffith. And so the fact that he looked similar, everybody said, "Oh, this is similar to Berserk." This kind of gets into your mind a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is a great point. I do wonder if that is what it is, because he is so similar.
It does give a weird like meta slant to it, and I have no clue. Like, I think Yukimura must be aware when he was designing Canute as a character, in some regard, that he'd make him like Griffith.
Yeah, I feel like it had to.
You have to, because
I mean, I remember seeing it and be like the first thing I was like, oh, it's like a Griffith guy to my roommate who also is a big like Berserk guy. Anyway.
Yeah, so I'd say the answers to your question will be clarified on whether Canute is a villainous character in the prologue. Then he's contextualized more as the series goes on, because he remains an important character.
Yep.
But yeah, there's some small things that I just didn't notice at the time when I read through. But then on rereads I caught, and that kind of flipped my perception on Canute, I'd say. So
yep.
Like almost completely, because it's not just how you view Canute, but also how Yukimura thematically views Canute. So that's very important. So
yeah. Now I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
But that's the end of all my notes.
Awesome.
These first 16 chapters, which is crazy to think about because it's all stuff I've already seen. So
well, we did it a whole hour and thoughts on this. Around about 20 minutes. So I hope people enjoyed this.
Yep.
I mean, I'll be definitely looking at the comments to see any feedback that we can improve on this. But I feel like it was pretty dense. It's a pretty dense little podcast. We covered a lot and we said a lot of stuff that was not too repetitive, I thought. So hopefully it's good. If I guess we didn't really think about if people hadn't watched the anime yet, and we probably should maybe make that a thing at the start. Like
I could put a spoiler warning right at the beginning.
Like this is spoilers for the anime. It'll be interesting once we get, but yeah, I mean, I'll be posting this to quite a few people that I've already watched the manga, but we'll probably just be like, oh yes, more Vinland Saga content. We're a bit thirsty for Vinland Saga content on the YouTube scene. Just because it's
I'm looking forward to watching your videos when I'm caught up.
Yeah, that's now you get to. I mean, it'd be interesting to see which one's your favorites and all that. Some are not Vinland Saga related. Some of them are. I mean, probably my next one will be a bit more of a jokey video. So anyway, enough about myself. Do your outro thing if you want to.
Outro. Oh boy. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I will put Bacon's link, I guess, in the description, so check him out. He makes a lot of great videos. He has a particularly great video about The Wire, which you should check out.
Oh, my man.
I can't condone his Vinland Saga videos because I haven't seen them, but I'm sure they're great as well.
So you have watched my Wire video, huh?
Oh, I've absolutely seen your Wire video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was really great.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
It. Yeah.
Guess because it's spoiler free.
It's a great video.
Okay, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Good stuff. That one is definitely less viewed. I put that up and it got that was when I was kind of like just starting to get the Vinland Saga audience, and nobody watched it. I put on the Vinland Saga on the Wire Reddit, and all these like TV schmucks comes up and like anime. I'm just like, good grief, guys! Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's not made towards you, but they were like, I mean, it's only like maybe 4 or 5 people, but it's very like even my mate who's not that big into anime but really likes The Wire. He was actually probably more put down by it than me. He was just like, how can people just dismiss like a video just based on that? And he got a little, and I appreciate it. Like he was getting sad for me, but But
Yeah.
I've dealt with it enough with random Reddit comments being like, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Yep.
That's fine. Sometimes the
No,
Reddit
great video.
algorithm doesn't go for you. Sorry. Talking about myself. This
If any of my like 8 subscribers or whatever want to check it out, then check it out. Might get 8 more views.
Yes. I mean, if those who are watching do enjoy Vinland Saga and have caught up on the manga, all my videos are absolutely free for watching. I mean, strike while the iron's hot before the next chapter comes out, because I had a big detailed kind of chapter analysis that I think a lot of people actually liked a lot more of chapter 191 than I was expecting. Or maybe it was 92. I can't remember. It's the one with Gudrid on the front, if you know that character. And it's weird. Making videos is weird. Sometimes you don't really think about what you're doing, but you just feel like you need to get it out there. And it turns out like people really, really like it. And you don't know why. So yeah, I've got lots of Vinland Saga content if you want that, basically. So yes. And hold up, if you have not watched Vinland Saga, I have got a video on Vinland Saga for spoiler-free audiences. That's also another one. That's my first Vinland Saga video. On what makes it feel so real. So if you want to go see some poor Jarkey Bacon videos, do that. But the main thing that you want to do, you want to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on Elite Ari's channel, and go watch his videos. Because you want to catch these. I don't know how much more regular do you think we'll make these? Like, because like I'm happy to do a weekly thing if you want to, or bi-weekly.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I'm fine with either. We'll see how it goes. I'm pretty sure I could do weekly. It should be fine.
Yeah, but there will be definitely 12 episodes of this, one for every single book. The upload schedule will be based mainly on whether Ari can how fast he reads it, how far, I do know I will be away at some points in the summer, but that we shouldn't, it really depends, but keep up to date, and you'll be seeing more of this. Hopefully you'll be able to keep up with how we're reading it. We won't be posting this like daily, so you don't have to read a whole 16 chapters every single day, all that stuff. So feel free, watch this while you're doing your laundry, while you're at the gym, or watch it while watching on YouTube. I don't know visually what Ari will do. I'm sure it'll be spectacular.
I have no idea yet. I made a thumbnail already, but no background.
You do. I make my thumbnail after.
I can't believe it. The thumbnail motivates me to make the video.
It's so fun. It's like the cherry on top. I'm just like, ooh, thumbnail time, and I can kind of make one in like maybe 2 hours, depending on how hard I want to go on it. But Anyway, yes. This is the end of the video. We've wrapped it up. All right, see you guys. See you next time. Bye bye.